Hello friends, welcome back to Huawei's. Welcome to the discussion on Economy Mains 365. This is part 2 of the lecture series where we will be discussing the second topic from the Economy Mains 365 of Vision. Now let's quickly begin. The second topic, economic reforms and inclusive growth. In this, the first topic what we have is with regard to economic reforms, and in that the first topic is the 30 years of 1991 economic reforms. So recently we have finished 30 years of the 1991 economic reforms, and that's why this is important for 2021 as well as 2022. So we have come so far, we have finished 30 years. So now it is time to evaluate the program, evaluate how things have went for India. If you see, in 1991, we faced a huge crisis, a huge economic crisis. This economic crisis is mainly because of the license rush that we had. So the private sector cannot enter into India and cannot function in India. Back then, they needed licenses, and also there was a policy of import substitution of India, where we regulated all the products that we are importing. And in fact, what we have done is we have in fact tried to replace the imported products with the Indian manufactured ones. So because of this, what happened is that there is this complacency that is developed in the Indian companies, and because there is no competition, there is no scope for improvement, and there is no innovation that was being done. So that was a major problem we had. And another one is closed economy. So closed economy means the convertibility of rupee is not that easy. That means we are not attracting investments, the foreign funding is not coming. Okay, that means the rupee was not being, you can say, today we are able to convert the dollar into rupee very easily, but back then it was not the condition. Okay, so that was there. So also the bureaucratic over involvement was seen in all the sectors, in all the areas. So that was the major causes. And if you see what were the immediate causes that caused the 1991 crisis, it is the first thing is the USSR collapse that we had. The second one is the Gulf War, which increased the fuel prices, and in 1985, from 1985 only actually the BOP crisis started. But immediate causes are these things: the Gulf crisis and the USSR breakdown. All these things affected India because India was dependent on them, right? And also in 1990, the government of India was close to defaulting on its foreign payments. So all of these situations, in fact, led to the crisis. So then India had to go for external bodies like IMF and World Bank for seeking help for the money. And then India opened its economy, the liberalization, privatization, globalization that was started from 1991 onwards. So as this was started, the LPG reform started, India has seen a tremendous growth. India has seen growth in all sectors, and if you see, the Indian middle class has grown after the 1991 LPG reforms. So what are the achievements? Broad achievements, if you see, the size of the Indian economy has grown from about 6 lakh crore to 140 crore. Now we are almost a $3 billion economy, 2.5 to 3 billion, somewhere it will be there, Indian economy, and that's a huge achievement for India. And the FDI investments have crossed 100 billion, which is a great thing, and also the forex reserves, it has crossed 600 billion mark. That's a huge achievement for India, because back then we did not have enough money to pay for even a single day of oil. But today we have achieved this feat. So now India is a successful exporter of auto parts, pharmaceutical goods, the engineering goods, the IT, software, textiles, so all of these things. But still there is a lot of scope for improvement. The manufacturing in India is still not developed, and also there is a shift demand, the supply equilibrium upwards, resulting in increased consumption and rising middle class. It also impacted various sectors like education, health, the nature of policies, cultural and technological development. The best impact can be seen in almost all the sectors in India. So now, what are the challenges that still remain? There are still a lot of challenges. The first is inequality. There is lack of inclusivity. The jobless growth we are seeing, this is a major challenge. And also the unemployment is another major challenge we have, because the manufacturing sector has not grown like what we want. So that's a major issue. And several areas like agriculture, the urban informal sector, the forest communities, they remain untouched by these reforms. And the surprise changes, if you see, there are a lot of changes, like even in the taxation area, we had a lot of issues. So few changes were made, especially like the introduction of GST and all, but still a lot has to be done, even the direct taxation area, right? And also there is lack of consistency at the policy levels, and Indian markets are very volatile and less attractive. So that's the reason we are not getting the investments what we should be getting. That is also a major thing. And there is chronic inadequacy in infrastructure, and it has multiplier effect on the different that you can say on all the areas of the economy. And also the financial sector, there is no deepened bond market in India. Okay, and also there are a lot of financial issues, the bank crisis, the NBFC crisis, and also the NPA problems. All of these things are there. And there is a lack of emphasis on the HR development. because this is very, very important. The human resource development is very important for the development of industries. The human resource development will ensure that we achieve the goals that we want to achieve, because the skill development is something that is very crucial for the people to be employable. Now, what are the measures that are needed? The measures that are needed are, so the complement privatization with the policies that prevent wealth concentration. So this is very important for the inclusive growth. Shifting from shareholder approach, shareholder capitalism, to stakeholder capitalism. That means dividing the profits. This is very important. Okay, something like cooperative, we can say, the cooperatives, focusing on creating an integrative and progressive taxation system. Clarity on the role of PSUs. This is very important, because some section of the society say the PSUs are important, whereas the other section says PSUs are not important. The government focusing on selling of few PSUs, saving of other PSUs. So there has to be clarity in the policy that will help even the private investors to take more bold steps, right? And also integrated approach to the financial sector, including banking, fintech, the financial markets, etc. And also another important thing is that economic reforms should also include the SDG targets. So without sustainable development, the growth that we achieve is not meaningful, I would say. So for the growth to be meaningful, including the sustainable development goals into the economic reforms, economic policy reforms is very, very important, right? Next topic is the post-pandemic recovery. So Indian economy got exposed by the COVID-19. There are a lot of issues. What are they? Already before the pandemic only, we have witnessed this slow growth rate. That is because of the NPA crisis, transition effect of the GST, and also other things like the NBFC crisis, all these things. And this is compounded by the COVID-19. And also there is economic fragility due to over-dependence on the service sector. The manufacturing sector is not that developed. And also inability to provide the adequate fiscal stimulus was seen even during the COVID. There is trust deficit between the government and the private sector that hampered a lot of investments. There is disruption in the supply of essential commodities that have shown lack of resilience in the supply chain. There is huge informalization, which has led to the migrant crisis which we have seen during the COVID-19. Huge informal sector is there in India. And also there is a threat of increasing poverty because of the COVID. World Bank has estimated that about 100 million people will be pushed into poverty. Sorry, not 100 million, it's 50 million. 48 million people will be pushed into poverty is what the World Bank estimated because of COVID. Disproportionate impact faced by the poorer sections was seen because the nature of inequality is prevalent in this model of economic development. And also there is increased wildlife presence and the nature repair of the ecosystem. It has highlighted the current unsustainable nature of economic growth. That means even the environment is taking a huge hit. The changes happened in the nature of economy. If you see, measures like social distancing and lockdowns have normalized the idea of work from home. It is now encouraged in all the private sectors because the work from home is going to save a lot even from the private sectors, and also the gig economy has increased. The gig economy ecosystem is developing a lot because this gives people also the freedom to work and not to work. And there is increased focus on the self-resilience due to disruptions in the global supply chain. There is increased digitalization of most of the business and institutions. There is increased trend of deglobalization due to the growth of nationalist sentiment like vaccine nationalism. There is uncertainty of labors because of the push towards tech-intensive and capital-intensive growth. And if you see the development of health capacity that was developed, and we have increased the production capacity of key products like ventilators, the PPE kits, etc. There is also change in equilibrium of economy in the form of altered the sectoral equilibrium, simultaneous formalization and informalization of economy, and change in regional distribution of work. Okay. So before going into this, a small information, guys. We are providing the Vision Mains 365 summaries at Rs 999. You can subscribe it from our Telegram channel. The Telegram channel details are there in the description. You can just go and have a look. And the document that we are using for the discussion is also the summary document of Vision Mains 365. Okay. So please go to our Telegram channel and have a look at it. Now coming back. So if you see the changes that has happened in other spheres, there is digitization of economy that was seen. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the digitalization of economy has happened, and also there is more than 100% increase in all the UPI transactions. The increased digitalization means increased already prevalent digital divide. That is also there. And work from home may lead to reimagining of urbanization with less pressure on the metro cities and limited office requirements. Because we see this skewed urban growth, a messy urban growth. So this can be tackled. E-learning led to rapid penetration of tech in education, because normally for the penetration of tech it might have taken a long time, but the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need for penetration of the technology. Habits followed during pandemic have resulted in internalization of the sanitization standards, ramification of gender parity. Increased unemployment has led to intensification of social issues like child labor, exploitation of workers, etc. Now, what are the methods to ensure smooth and speedy recovery? Those are ensuring food security by expanding PDS. This is very important. The food security, the social security, this has to be provided to bring people out of the poverty. And also, the resilience of supply chain has to be increased. There is this supply chain initiative at a global level, which is launched by countries like Japan, Australia, India. That is a very good thing, because you have to move away from China. We should not be over dependent on China, because we have seen during a crisis what can happen. That is another important thing. The public investment in physical and social infrastructure to augment health, urban, rural and digital infrastructure is the need of the hour. And also providing physical room for the economy, and that has to be relaxed by the FRBM Act. Okay? And the philosophy to build a better post-pandemic economy is moving towards new, broader destination of economic development, encompassing environmental sustainability, rising well-being, reduction of inequality, the systematic resilience along with economic growth. So this is the way forward that we can write. What kind of economic growth is what we need? For this we will write this thing. Okay? Moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Focus on building resilience by strengthening health and social protection systems to bring people out of the poverty and also ensure inclusive growth, to close the digital divide and ensure green recoveries. Focusing on triple bottom line, people, profit, planet, which includes economic growth, social check parameters like the inequality levels and the environment status, and continuous innovation as part of the process with experimenting like 4-day week, 24/7 economies, among the others. So all of these things are required to make India a better economy, because we cannot develop, or you can say we cannot choose the development process which is chosen by the West. We need a different solution for a sustainable development, sustainable economic development, sustainable growth. So we have to bring in innovation in all the sectors. So these are the things that we can write in the way forward. Now let's move on. Next topic is the poverty alleviation. If we see the key targets of this poverty alleviation, one of the important things is eradicate extreme poverty. The baseline poverty line estimation in India on consumption expenditure, not the basis of income levels. So that means how much a person will consume. Based on that, poverty has to be estimated. Identification of all types of poverty beyond economy, because poverty is not only the state of economy. Poverty it's a multidimensional concept. That is the reason too these days we are talking about the multidimensional poverty index. Next one is addressing multidimensional poverty in a holistic manner. What is the present situation? These facts, these stats, you can directly use it in your exam. There are about 364 million people below poverty line. 271 million people came out of poverty line between 2005 to 15. So the global poverty line for extreme poverty is $1.9, and 40% of the world's poor live in conflict affected countries, because in the conflict affected countries, if you see, there will be no growth, there will be, you can say, no basic supply, no basic amenities will be provided, and also the government will not be able to take care of these people. That is a major thing. And next, if you see the schemes and initiatives, the government has launched various schemes for the overall development of the poor people, for the upliftment of the poor people. They are Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, the Manrega scheme, which is the guarantee employment scheme in the rural areas, the PM Awas Yojana for the houses, the PM Kisan Nidhi scheme, Integrated Child Development Scheme, the National Food Security Scheme, and the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyani Yojana. All these schemes are launched by the government, and you can use these schemes in a very good way in your answer writing. Okay. Next one is constraints. What are the constraints? If you see the constraints for poverty alleviation, they are unequal distribution of assets led to free riders. So that means free riders is basically are those people who just use this and who just use the schemes, but they do not work hard and earn the income. Next one is number of resources allocated are not sufficient. Less participants of local level institutions in the program implementation. That is also a major problem. Now, what is the way forward? The way forward is providing trainings and incentives to government and bank officials, ensuring participation of local government institutions, effective wealth distribution and benefits of economic growth to all the sections of the society, and also the policy has to be it has to be framed in a multi-dimensional way, multi-directional way. It should reflect the changing profile of the poor, should address the hotspots of the conflict, climate change, and COVID-19. So that means I would say a one policy fit all approach will not work here. Okay, and also expanding cooperation and coordination at state, national, and global level among all the stakeholders. So these are the things. Now let's look at the next one, that is inflation and money supply. If you see the inflation and money supply, the targets ensuring overall price rise within reasonable limits. Inflation target is being estimated through CPI, which is a target of 4%, controlling inflation through maintaining economic growth. So in the COVID-19, during the time and all, we have seen the rise in inflation, but that is mostly because of the rise in food prices. The CPI consumer inflation has increased in most states during the COVID-19 year. So in 2020-21, the average CPI inflation is 6.6%. There is high urban inflation versus rural inflation in the most of the states. And for this, government has launched various initiatives. The Essential Commodities Act, banning of onion import, putting stock limit on onion, easing restrictions on import of pulses, etc., creating the buffer stock of pulses, price stabilization fund, price support schemes, and strategic buffers. But for this, there are a lot of constraints. There are a lot of constraints, like estimating appropriate level of inflation for a country like India is not easy, because India is very diverse and all. Next one is subdued economic activity. The pandemic induced supply chain restrictions like labor shortages and reverse migration, the social distancing in factories, and all, and a lot of other things, the transportation issues and all. High food inflation contributed by vegetables, meat, fishes, oil, fat, pulses, etc. So these are the major constraints that we have. So inflation, to a certain extent, it is useful as well. It is useful for the growth. It is useful for the investments to, it is mainly for the investments to be attracted. So for all of these things, inflation is important, even for the employment and all. But inflation beyond a point is not going to give any benefit. So inflation has to be in a range. Inflation has to be in a range, and that range for India is about 4 to 6%. That means 4 plus or minus 2% is the range. But now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, even these also have taken it, and the government, to a certain extent, has eased the restrictions, I would say. And what is the way forward? The way forward is effective implementation of counter-cyclical fiscal policy. Counter-cyclical fiscal policy is basically to increase the growth. That means the government has to spend more to ensure that the growth increases, the demand increases in the economy. Okay. And also tolerating high inflation growth and taking accommodative stance to restore the GDP during the time of economic crisis. The long-term measures to curtail food inflation through decentralized cold storage facility, post-harvest technology, etc. Review of onion buffer stock policy. All of these things are the way forward, which we can write. So if there's a question on inflation and how it got impacted during the COVID-19 and what can be done, so for this we can directly write this. Okay, now let's move on. Liquidity trap. So this liquidity trap, recently the IMF economist Geeta Gopinath has stated that the global economy is heading towards this liquidity trap. So normally, what is this liquidity trap? It is the situation where the interest rates are low and the savings rates are high. That means the monetary policy is ineffective. Generally, to control the inflation, the interest rates are generally used. When there is high inflation, then the interest rates are increased. Because high inflation means there is more money supply in the economy. So to cut the money supply, the interest rates will be increased. Okay, so sometimes during the recession and all these times, what they will do is they will decrease the interest rates. They will decrease the interest, and the main reason for the decreasing of these interest rates is to increase the demand. So demand increase करने के लिए they will decrease the inflation. They will decrease the interest rates. So sometimes what will happen is that even the interest rates are decreased, the people will not be willing to spend money. So that is called as liquidity trap, right? So in such cases, any additional money that's supplied to the economy gets channeled into savings rather than into investments, thus rendering economy to remain at the same liquidity level. So economic situation due to COVID has led to the following developments which indicate towards a liquidity trap. 60% of global economy, including 97% of the advanced economies, they have decreased their interest rates below 1%. In 1/5 of the world, they are negative, in fact. So that means to boost the demand, to ensure that demand increases, the governments are doing this. Because we have seen during the COVID-19 and also because of the global, economic situation, the investments, or you can say the money that is being invested in the economies is not that huge. But for the countries to grow, for the countries to develop, investments are very, very important. And for the countries to come out of this COVID-induced economic recession, the investments are very, very important because they will increase the demand and they will keep the economy on track. Okay, and also despite extremely low interest rates, global demand is still sluggish due to the pandemic. Due to decreased interest rates, money supply around the world would increase and this can trigger a currency war due to sliding exchange rates. Okay, and also the developing countries, they mostly, if you see, the developed countries have done this, but in the developing countries the interest rates are still high. Okay, but recently developing countries like Peru, Chile have almost brought the borrowing cost to zero due to their crashing economies, thus signaling a liquidity trap. Now, should India worry? So in India also we have seen the effects of lockdown, but the thing is that the positive thing is that after the lockdowns are lifted, the growth, we are witnessing a growth in the economy. And again, to drag India's economy, increasing risk of liquidity trap if inflation fails to fall below 6% within a quarter or so as projected by RBI, then there will be no problem, there will be no issue. Now what has to be done? What has to be done is globally there has to be a synchronized fiscal policy that has to be introduced. The countries have to come together and they have to synchronize their fiscal policies to a certain extent so that there will not be any liquidity crisis in the world, and also the countries can come out of these things. Okay, and second one is increasing global coordination can deter a global deflation path which may lead to a prolonged recession. It will not be easy for all the countries. Okay, and revisiting global economic arrangements like trade arrangements and global supply chains could help better invest in and calibrate the available liquidity. So these are things that can be done. Okay, so that's it guys from our side. I'll meet you again in the next lecture. Till then, keep studying and stay tuned. And before I leave, one more small information. We are providing the summaries of Vision Mains Test Series and Vision Mains 365. You can subscribe to these courses from our Telegram channel. The Telegram channel details are there in the description. You can go to the Telegram and join our channel to get all the information. Okay, so that's it guys. Thank you. I'll see you again. Bye bye.